Welcome to our focused analysis. Today, we're setting aside the single iconic image to explore the incredibly rich and often complex life of Carrie Frances Fisher.
It's so important to do that. You really have to look at her life as this study in duality. She was born in 1956, and we lost her in 2016. And maybe her greatest feat was managing two, really demanding careers at the same time.
One right out in the open and one sort of hidden behind the scenes.
Exactly. So our goal here is to really distill the most compelling insights from the material, especially those other roles she played. The writer, the script doctor, the mental health champion, that can get overshadowed by, well, the hair buns.
That dual identity really is the perfect starting point.
Yeah.
As an actress, she is, and probably always will be, linked to Princess Leia Organa in the Star Wars franchise.
From the original films in the late 70s and early 80s, and then, of course, her return for the new trilogy.
But running parallel to that massive global success was her writing career, especially her semi-autobiographical work, like Postcards from the Edge.
And the recognition for that side of her, for her whole multifaceted career, it's really continued to grow long after she passed away. The accolades really tell that story.
Yeah, they do.
In 2017, she was named a Disney legend, which is, a little ironic for someone who was so good at satirizing the Hollywood machine.
A bit, yeah. But it cemented her place in that franchise's history.
It did, but more to the point about her writing, in 2018, she posthumously won a Grammy Award.
For Best Spoken Word Album. For reading her own memoir, The Princess Diarist.
Right, a Grammy for her words. It's so telling.
It really is.
And then, in a tribute that just felt so fitting, she finally got her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on May 4th, 2023.
Star Wars Day. Of course.
So, of course. It's just a perfect summary, isn't it? Celebrated by the industry, but truly recognized on a day for the very thing that both launched her and sometimes felt like it contained her.
That idea of being born into the industry, of being Hollywood royalty, that's just essential context for understanding everything that came after.
She truly was. Carrie Frances Fisher, born in Burbank, California, October 21st, 1956. Her parents were actress Debbie Reynolds and singer Eddie Fisher.
Two of the biggest stars of their time.
Absolutely. And her family history was, well, it was complicated. Her paternal grandparents were Russian Jewish immigrants. Her mother's side was English and Scots-Irish, and she was raised Nazarene. So you have this intersection of cultures right in the middle of this high-glamour Hollywood setting.
And that setting was rocked almost immediately by a huge public scandal, the kind of thing that would, follow any child, let alone one whose parents were on the cover of every magazine.
She was only 2 years old when they divorced in 1959. And it wasn't quiet separation. The sources all point to the catalyst being Eddie Fisher's affair with Elizabeth Taylor.
And this was right after Taylor's husband, Mike Todd, had died.
Exactly. It was just a sensational betrayal that became tabloid fodder for years. It was a massive, massive story.
That level of public drama and, family chaos at such a young age, it has to have informed her decision later to just turn her own life into art.
It had to. And that divorce was just the beginning of this really complex family tree.
Yeah.
Eddie Fisher and Elizabeth Taylor got married. That didn't last long. Then he married Connie Stevens, and Carrie gained two half-sisters, Jolie and Tricia Lee Fisher.
And her mother remarried as well.
Right, to a shoe store magnate named Harry Carl. That marriage ended when Carrie was 17. So you have this constant shifting of parental figures, all against this backdrop of very high stakes, very public romance. It definitely fed her coping mechanisms.
And one of those mechanisms initially led her away from the spotlight and toward books.
Yes, she became known as the bookworm.
Mm.
She said she hid in books as a child. And this wasn't just, casual reading. She was into classic literature. She was writing poetry. It's so crucial because it shows that the writer in her was there long before the actress.
But that intellectual side of her clashed with actual school. She dropped out of Beverly Hills High School when she was 16, right?
That's right. Because her ambition was already theatrical. She left school to join the Broadway revival of Irene in 1973, which was starring her mother, Debbie Reynolds.
Wow. So she's a debutante and a Broadway performer all at once, instead of going to high school.
Exactly. It just establishes this theme in her life of choosing real, hands-on experience in the arts over a traditional education.
But she did try to get some formal training after that, didn't she?
She did, which shows, I think, a real commitment to the craft. She went to London's Central School of Speech and Drama for 18 months, and she was even accepted to Sarah Lawrence College, which is a fantastic art school, but she left before graduating.
The pull of Hollywood was just too strong.
It was. And it happened almost instantly. Her very first film role was a big one, and she was so incredibly young.
This was Shampoo in 1975.
Yes, the Columbia Pictures comedy. She played Lorna Carf, this precociously seductive character, and she was only 17 when they filmed it. So right away, she's in scenes with Warren Beatty and Julie Christie. She proved she could hold her own in a very adult, very sophisticated project from the get-go.
But of course, no role can compare to what happened 2 years later. Princess Leia in Star Wars, 1977. It just defined her public image for the next 40 years.
It really did. And what's fascinating is what George Lucas saw in her. The material has this great quote from him where he said she was extremely smart, a talented actress, writer, and comedian.
A writer and a comedian, he saw that right away.
He did. He said Leia had to be this great and powerful princess, feisty, wise, and full of hope in a role that was more difficult than most people might think.
That's a key insight. He wasn't just looking for an ingenue. He needed someone with the intellect to portray a leader.
Precisely. Leia had to be a general, a diplomat. She was the anchor of the rebellion's hope. And Fisher brought this inherent wit and intelligence to the lines that made them work, even when everything around her was pure space fantasy.
And she played that role again in The Empire Strikes back in 1980 and Return of the Jedi in 83.
Which brings us to another huge cultural moment from that trilogy, the metal bikini.
The infamous bikini from Return of the Jedi.
The slave Leia outfit.
Yeah.
It's just achieved this level of fame or maybe notoriety that was way bigger than its actual screen time. She promoted the film wearing it on the cover of Rolling Stone in 1983.
And it became this instantly recognizable and often pretty controversial pop culture symbol.
Yeah. And she had a very complicated relationship with it herself. She would use her humor to critique the sexualization of it, but she also acknowledged its, undeniable fame.
It's so important to remember, though, that while Star Wars was happening, she was actively seeking out really different kinds of work. She refused to be typecast.
You can see that resilience so clearly in her filmography. Right in the middle of the original trilogy, in 1980, she shows up in The Blues Brothers,
As the mystery woman.
playing Jake's incredibly vengeful ex-lover. It was a totally different kind of comedic energy. It was darker, it was physical. She got to be dramatic and funny at the same time.
And that film set gave us one of the most famous anecdotes of her entire life.
The Brussels sprout story, it's incredible. While they were shooting, she started choking on a Brussels sprout, and her co-star, Dan Aykroyd, performed the Heimlich maneuver on her.
And saved her life.
She credited him with saving her life, yes. It's such a classic, bizarre Hollywood story, but it was also this life-altering moment that led to a really significant personal relationship later on.
We'll get to that connection, but first, just looking at the rest of her work in the 80s, it's so varied.
She consistently worked with really respected directors on interesting projects. In 1986, she was in Woody Allen's Hannah and Her Sisters.
Which was critically acclaimed.
Very. And then toward the end of the decade, she had these two great supporting roles that really cemented her as this beloved comedic actress. She was in The Burbs with Tom Hanks in '89.
And maybe most famously as Marie in When Harry Met Sally.
Yes. Playing this sharp, sardonic best friend. Her comedic timing in that movie is just flawless. She's the perfect counterpoint to the main characters.
And the way she delivers those lines, it sounds like dialogue written by a writer.
That is a perfect way to put it, because it connects directly to her second career. She knew how to land a punchline, but she also knew exactly how to write one.
Before we get fully into her writing, she did return to the stage as well, didn't she?
She did. She kept that connection to Broadway. She was in a play called Censored Scenes from King Kong in 1980. And then in '83, she took on a very dramatic role in Agnes of God.
And the timing of that run was, well, it was another reflection of her complicated family life.
It was beautiful, in a way. Her show was running on Broadway at the same time that her mother, Debbie Reynolds, was starring in Woman of the Year.
So mother and daughter, both headlining on Broadway simultaneously.
Yes. Two different generations, two different styles of Hollywood performance, sharing that same professional space. It just shows that deep, continuing bond between them.
Okay, let's make that transition to what many people, I think, would argue is her most impactful legacy, even if it's the one people know the least about, her career as a novelist and as one of the industry's top script doctors.
This really is a revelation for a lot of fans. And this wasn't some, slow, gradual shift. It was explosive. Her first novel, Postcards from the Edge, came out in 1987. It was a huge bestseller.
And it won the Los Angeles Pen Award for Best First Novel.
Which immediately gave her legitimacy as a real literary figure. This wasn't just a celebrity with a ghostwriter. This was her.
And the book's power came from its raw, semi-autobiographical honesty. She put her own pain right there on the page from the very beginning.
She took the most dramatic parts of her life, her struggles with drug addiction, her famously complex and loving and difficult relationship with her mother, and she fictionalized them, satirized them. And the book worked so well because of that honesty, which was wrapped in this incredible cutting wit.
She then did something pretty unusual. She adapted her own novel into the screenplay for the 1990 film.
She did. She wrote the script, which starred Meryl Streep and Shirley MacLaine, and it got her a BAFTA nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. It proved she was a master of screenwriting, too.
But she famously refused to play the main character, Suzanne, the one based on herself. Why was that?
It says so much about her. Her focus was on the craft of writing, not on reliving the trauma. When she was asked about it, she gave that classic, perfect Carrie Fisher response, "I've already played Suzanne."
She had lived it. She didn't need to perform it again.
Exactly. Her interest was in the structure, the dialogue, making sure the satire landed. And that leads us straight into her career as a script doctor.
This is such a fascinating, almost secret part of Hollywood history. For about 15 years, from the early 90s to the mid-2000s, she was the person studios called when a script was in trouble.
She was the ultimate uncredited fixer. A 1992 Entertainment Weekly article called her one of the most sought-after doctors in town. And this was hard work rewriting dialogue on a tight deadline, fixing pacing and especially punching up the comedy and making sure the female characters sounded like real smart women.
The list of films she secretly worked on is just staggering. It's everything from huge blockbusters to, well, some pretty bad comedies.
It's an incredible list. It shows her range. She did uncredited work on Spielberg's Hook. She worked on Sister Act, Outbreak, The Wedding Singer. For action movies, she was brought in specifically to punch up Rene Russo's dialogue in Lethal Weapon 3.
She even worked on Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot.
Yes, which suggests that sometimes she was called in for a true emergency. But maybe the most ironic detail in all of this is her work for George Lucas.
He hired her to fix his writing.
The men who made her a star hired her to fix his scripts. She polished dialogue for the young Indiana Jones Chronicles, and crucially, for the Star Wars prequel scripts.
That is just profound. She was being paid to improve the dialogue for the franchise that made her famous, but she got no official credit for it.
It just shows you how much Lucas trusted her specific talent for making dialogue sound human and natural, which, was famously not his greatest strength. She understood that universe better than almost anyone.
So why did she stop doing this? It sounds like it was a pretty lucrative line of work.
She stopped around 2008. And her reason was that the industry practices had changed in a way she found unethical.
What happened?
Studios started demanding that writers submit extensive notes on how they would fix a script for free just to be considered for the job. They could then take all the best ideas from different writers, use them, and not hire anyone.
That sounds like a complete exploitation of their work.
She called it a life-wasting event, and she decided to walk away. She was in a position where she could afford to take a stand against the devaluation of a writer's work, and she did.
Her own life, of course, was always providing new material, and her relationships were just as high-profile and dramatic as her childhood had been.
They really were, and they often intersected with her work. In her last memoir, The Princess Diarist, which came out just before she died, she revealed that she'd had a 3-month affair with Harrison Ford while filming the first Star Wars.
A huge revelation 40 years later.
A huge revelation. She was 19, he was 33, and married at the time. It just added this whole other layer of vulnerability to that whole Star Wars story.
And after that, she reconnected with her Blues Brothers co-star, Dan Aykroyd.
That Brussels sprout incident clearly left an impression. They actually got engaged. He proposed on the set of the movie. They got rings, blood tests, the whole thing.
But it didn't last.
No, because she chose to reconcile with her on-again, off-again partner, the musician Paul Simon.
And that relationship with Paul Simon was maybe her most famous. A true meeting of artistic minds.
It was incredibly intense. You had two brilliant, sensitive, and very complicated artists. They got married in 1983, but divorced about a year later. The connection was too volatile, I think, to sustain a marriage. But they did continue to date for a while, even after the divorce.
And their relationship is immortalized in his music.
It is. She was in his music video for Renee and Georgette Magritte. And more profoundly, their romance inspired much of his album Hearts and Bones. and there are references to her in the song Graceland.
She said she felt privileged to be in his song.
She did. She recognized the artistic honor and being a muse for such a great songwriter, even if the relationship itself was painful.
And then there was the relationship that gave her her only child, her daughter Billie Lourd.
That was her partnership with the talent agent Brian Lord. They were together from 91 to 94. And while she often called him her second husband, the sources are clear they were never legally married.
Their relationship ended when he left her for a man.
Yes, an event she wrote about with her trademark honesty and humor, really. She explored the complexities of creating a non-traditional family with so much grace.
Before we talk about her advocacy work, we have to touch on a very tragic event that happened in her home involving a man named Greg Stevens.
Yes, and we need to approach this with a lot of sympathy for everyone involved. On February 26, 2005, a 42-year-old lobbyist named R. Gregory Stevens was found dead in her California home.
The final cause of death was listed as cocaine and oxycodone use.
Yes, but with a critical contributing factor: chronic and previously undiagnosed heart disease. That detail is so important because it complicates the simple overdose narrative the media ran with.
And the event had a profound and lasting impact on her.
It was devastating. She later said in an interview that she believed his ghost haunted her house, which deeply unsettled her. And she admitted that the trauma was so severe that it triggered a relapse, and she started using drugs again for about a year. It just highlights how fragile recovery can be in the face of intense grief.
And this cycle of addiction and mental health struggles leads us to what is arguably her most important legacy, her courageous, pioneering advocacy work.
She practically dismantled the culture of shame around mental illness in Hollywood. She went on shows like 2020, she did a documentary with Stephen Fry in the UK, and she just talked openly about her diagnosis of bipolar disorder and her addictions.
And she reframed her drug use as a form of self-medication.
That concept was so important. She explained that she used pain medication, Percodan specifically, to try to dial down the manic side of her illness. She said, "Drugs contained me." That language gave people a real window into the desperate search for equilibrium.
And she even gave her moods nicknames, which is so her.
It's pure Carrie Fisher. Using humor to make the terrifying manageable, she called her manic mood Roy, the wild ride of a mood, and the depressive side was Pam, who stands on the shore and sobs. It made this clinical diagnosis so instantly human and relatable.
She was also incredibly open about using one of the most stigmatized treatments there is, electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT.
She wrote about it in her book Shockaholic. She described it as a way to blow apart the cement in her brain, and at one point was receiving it every 6 weeks. Just by talking about it so frankly, she stripped away so much of the fear and misinformation that surrounds that treatment.
And all this advocacy work earned her some very serious recognition.
It did. In 2016, Harvard College gave her their annual Outstanding Lifetime Achievement Award in Cultural Humanism.
And the citation specifically mentioned her forthrightness about addiction and mental illness.
It did. They praised her for advancing the public conversation with creativity and empathy. And she backed it up with action, supporting groups like the International Bipolar Foundation and the Midnight Mission.
Her later career really became this incredible fusion of performance and memoir, most famously with her one-woman show, Wishful Drinking.
Wishful Drinking was the perfect synthesis of everything she was. It started as the play in 2006, then became a best-selling book in 2008, and then an HBO documentary in 2010. It was her, on stage, telling her own story on her own terms.
And it's so tragic that she was still working on it. The material says she was preparing a sequel when she died.
She was. She never stopped turning her life into art.
Her TV work in her later years also got her a lot of acclaim. She earned 2 Emmy nominations for guest roles.
Those nominations really show what a comedic force she was. The first was in 2008 for playing Rosemary Howard on 30 Rock, a brilliant, volatile, old-school comedy writer.
And the second was posthumous.
It was. For her role as Mia, the mother on the series Catastrophe, her final appearance aired just after she died. It was just this perfect deadpan performance right at the end of her life.
She also had a recurring voice role on Family Guy.
Right, as Peter Griffin's boss, Angela. So her comedic reach extended into animation to a whole different audience.
And her final book brought everything full circle back to Star Wars.
The Princess Diarist.
Yeah.
It was based on the actual diaries she kept while filming the original trilogy. It was so candid. And that's the book that won her that posthumous Grammy for the audiobook. Her own voice, reading her own story.
And she was able to complete the story of General Leia Organa on screen.
She finished filming all of her scenes for The Last Jedi before she passed away. And the director, Rian Johnson, confirmed that a lot of her own ideas and her own lines made it into the film. She was still script doctoring her own character until the very end.
For the final film, The Rise of Skywalker, they had to use unreleased footage to include her.
They did from The Force Awakens. It was a really complicated process, but they managed to give Leia's story a conclusion using only performances she had already given.
And there was one last film, Wonderwell, that was released years later.
Yes, filmed in 2016, but not released until 2023. Her work just kept appearing, long after she was gone.
We should turn now to the circumstances of her death. The sources detail some very complex medical findings.
And we approach this with immense sympathy. The medical emergency happened on December 23, 2016, on a flight from London to LA. It was reported as a cardiac arrest about 15 minutes before landing.
A passenger performed CPR immediately.
Yes. She was then in intensive care at the UCLA Medical Center for 4 days. She passed away on the morning of December 27th at age 60.
The initial death certificate was deferred pending a full investigation.
And when the final coroner's report came out in June 2017, it said the exact cause of death was undetermined.
But it listed contributing factors.
It did. Sleep apnea was one, and also a buildup of fatty tissue on her artery walls. And then the toxicology report added another layer of tragedy. It confirmed the presence of cocaine, heroin, other opiates, and MDMA in her system.
But the report couldn't say if those substances directly caused her death.
That's the crucial point. They couldn't determine when she had taken them or if they were a direct factor. It just shows the incredibly complex reality when you're dealing with long-term health issues and substance abuse.
Her daughter, Billie Lourd, released such a powerful statement in response.
It was a profound summary of her mother's entire life's work. She said she battled drug addiction and mental illness her entire life. She ultimately died of it, and she connected it directly back to her mother's mission.
She said her mom would want her death to encourage people to be open about their struggles.
Yes. It was this final, heartbreaking act of advocacy, in a way.
And in her own unique way, she also left the world with one last piece of dark humor for her own obituary.
It's from Wishful Drinking. Her request was that her obituary report that she drowned in moonlight, strangled by my own bra.
And many news outlets actually honored that request.
They did. They understood it was her final punchline. A joke born from a life of dealing with the absurdities of Hollywood and her own body image.
And then the day after she died, the unthinkable happened.
It's an almost mythological level of tragedy. On December 28th, her mother, Debbie Reynolds, had a stroke. She was at her son Todd's home, actively planning Carrie's burial arrangement.
And she died later that day.
She did. Todd Fisher reported that right before she lost consciousness, his mother said, "I want to be with Carrie." It just suggests a grief that was too much for a human heart to bear.
They passed away one day apart.
A shared passing that links their legacies forever.
And the burial details are as perfectly unconventional as you would expect from Carrie Fisher.
Her ashes were placed next to her mother's in a crypt. And Todd Fisher revealed that her ashes are held inside a giant novelty Prozac pill. He said it was her favorite possession.
It's the most perfect, poignant, and darkly funny final statement.
A final monument to her lifelong battle with mental health.
As we look back at her legacy, the tributes that followed her death showed a love that went so far beyond just Princess Leia.
Oh, absolutely. Beyond the official honors, the public reaction was just so personal. Before she got her official star on the Walk of Fame, fans made their own, and it read, "Carrie Fisher, may the force be with you, always hope."
They saw her as a symbol of hope.
Exactly. The lightsaber vigils that happened all over the country, they weren't just for a character, they were for the person who gave them permission to be imperfect.
And you can see her influence in the art of her friends, even years later.
She had these incredibly deep friendships. She was very close with the musician James Blunt. He said she acted as his therapist while he was recording his first big album. And in 2023, he released a song called Dark Thought, which is all about her death and her impact on him.
When you connect all these threads, the Hollywood childhood, the literary talent, the secret script work, the fearless advocacy, her life really shows how deep vulnerability can be turned into a source of strength.
She took her deepest wounds and turned them into not just art, but into a meaningful society-changing conversation. She normalized talking about mental illness and addiction years, even decades before it became more common. She gave people a vocabulary for their own pain.
That is a legacy worth studying. So here's a final thought for you to mull over based on everything we've talked about. How did Carrie Fisher, by using these unexpected tools of comedy, literature, and even her own movie roles, manage to change the public conversation around mental illness and addiction? And how did that courageous openness fundamentally alter things for the generations of artists who came after her?
That really is the question that defines her impact. It's worth spending some time thinking about the power of just one person's honesty.
Thank you for joining us for this in-depth look at the extraordinary life of Carrie Fisher.
We appreciate you taking the time for this focused analysis of the material.
Thanks for listening.